Dumelang, ladies and gentlemen. Dumelang, the Honorable Vice President and Minister of Finance, and I should add, Acting President, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, members of the government, the public service, the diplomatic corps, international organizations, representatives from the private sector, Business Botswana, the media, all protocol observed. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you at our first IFC Day here in Botswana. We are here with our Regional Director for Southern Africa, several managers from IFC, investment and advisory colleagues from IFC, as well as our colleagues from the World Bank. We are organizing this IFC Day in partnership with Business Botswana and are grateful for the support, and I would like to acknowledge both the President of Business Botswana, Mr. Neo Ngwako, and the CEO, Mr. Norman Molele. We do have quite a program today. The Honorable Vice President and Minister of Finance, Mr. Ndaba Gaolathe, has graciously accepted to make opening remarks, and we do thank him for his presence. As you would see from the agenda, which you can access through QR codes on the welcome card, we will proceed afterwards with a fireside chat on how to spur private sector growth in Botswana with Norman Molele, the CEO of Business Botswana, and Claudia Conceição, the Regional Director for the International Finance Corporation in Southern Africa. Our various investment and advisory colleagues will then present our main industry groups, manufacturing and services, agribusiness, infrastructure and natural resources, economics and country advisory, transaction advisory. In all this, there will be time for questions and answers and a coffee and tea break in between. We will then have a panel discussion on investing in the energy sector in Botswana with representatives from IFC, the Botswana Power Corporation, Rand Merchant Bank, Botswana Development Corporation, and the World Bank, followed by closing remarks which will be made by our country manager, Roland Yameogo. While we call it an IFC Day, it will actually only be a half day. We are quite aware that your time is precious. And we will end at 1 p.m. to be followed by lunch here at the hotel. If you'd like to speak to some of our colleagues, we will also have a breakout room on the first floor, right by the escalators, where team assistants can refer you to the right person. We are, of course, grateful that you have accepted our invitation and look forward to a lively and interactive IFC Day. Thank you, Reale Boha. And I would like to ask you to stand for the Honorable Vice President and Minister of Finance.
May we please be seated. I'm not sure if this is on. I am often tempted, like many others, to start by saying protocol is observed. But I'm also committed to the idea that whenever anyone says protocol is observed, what they really mean is that they don't know what the protocol is. So certainly I have to start with the Director of Ceremonies. It says here permanent secretaries, but I only see one permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Alex Khanetsano, the President of Business Botswana, Mr. Nwaku, and the CEO of Business Botswana, Mr. Molele, Madame Claudia Conceição, head of the IFC in the region, Mr. Lian Wang, the resident professor of the World Bank Group resident in Botswana, Mr. Roland Yamulu, the IFC country representative, chief executive officers of state-owned enterprises, CEOs of private companies, our diplomatic partners, senior government officials, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and men and women who are not as gentle. Good morning to all of you. We are here today because we believe in a simple but powerful idea that Botswana's future will not be left to chance, but will be shaped by the choices we make together. It is an honor to welcome all of you to this important forum convened by the IFC in collaboration with Business Botswana under the theme Enabling Inclusive, Sustainable Private Sector Growth. Your presence here today affirms our shared purpose to build a Botswana that is more inclusive, more sustainable, and more prosperous for all our citizens. This gathering comes at a pivotal time. Botswana stands at a threshold of a new chapter, a chapter where the IFC's investment, advisory, and upstream services can accelerate diversification, can strengthen private sector leadership, and can open new markets for our country. Growth must not be measured by numbers alone, but by the qualities of the jobs we create and the dignity we restore in the lives of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, government is committed to a bold transformation agenda, one anchored on fiscal discipline, revitalizing infrastructure, reforming state-owned enterprises, diversifying the economy, and equipping our people with the skills to thrive in a changing global economy. Our true north, a high-income Botswana that is digitally enabled, a Botswana that is export-driven, a Botswana that is economically diversified, where every citizen is employed, empowered, and fulfilled. Our true north is also premised on a focus on 9 key sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, infrastructure, tourism, energy and mining, financial services and digitalization, social protection, healthcare, and education. And yet, government cannot do any of these alone. Transformation demands innovative partnerships and courageous investment solutions, the very strategies and collaborations we are here to discuss today. So let us seize this moment, let us match vision with action, and let us work together to write the new chapter in Botswana's story. We are delighted that the government of Botswana is part of an enduring and nourishing relationship with the IFC and the entire World Bank Group, 2 inseparable Siamese twins. We believe that this forum will present an opportunity to stimulate our critical thinking and to develop new ideas through discussions and better connect with key decision makers in both the public and private sectors. We also believe that the Botswana Economic Transformation Program, with its precision and focus, has filtered and given birth to investment-ready, high-impact projects, some of which are self-funding and others in need of partial funding. The IFSC is a potential partner, among others, among a constellation of other partners that we need to mechanize these investment prospects. By continually and continuously engaging in consultative forums, the government opens up platforms through which national priorities continue to be refined and by extension creates a conducive environment for inclusive growth, for trust, for openness, and for accountability, both within and between stakeholders. This is of significance to government given that available national resources are limited while our societal needs and wants continue to grow. The recovery of the global economy remains fragile for a plethora of reasons, including the slowdown of economic activities in the developed economies caused by geopolitical events, including the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, and tensions in the Middle East. The fragility of this global economy, the emergence of lab-grown diamonds and other factors continue to conspire to subdue our diamond sector, whose recent persistent depression has constrained both Botswana's economy and its fiscus. Botswana confronts what has now become an existential requirement, a need to broaden its tax base and our revenue sources, a need to curtail wastage in our government system and to elevate efficiency and effectiveness and fundamentally diversify the economy. We need to fundamentally diversify our economy if we are to survive. We are determined to achieve this. We are determined to achieve this and do even more. In fact, we are determined and we are well on our way to becoming what I continue to say will be the best managed country on the African continent, the paragon of fairness, unity, and inclusive prosperity on the African continent. Not even an applause. Botswana needs to unlock, to unleash, and embrace the immense role that the private sector, our social entrepreneurs and innovators play in the building of this new Botswana. We are committed to creating a private sector-friendly policy environment that continuously nourishes innovation and entrepreneurship. We will work together, all of us, to bring down the man-made barriers that are a stumbling block to our economic growth. We will review and institute a supportive legislative framework, including simplifying our tax system. Ladies and gentlemen, the IFC's mandate is to advance economic development and improve the lives of people by encouraging growth of the private sector in developing countries. The corporation applies its financial resources, its technical expertise, its global experience, its innovative thinking to assist its member countries to overcome financial, operational, and other challenges. The IFC has deep domain knowledge in triple Ps, a discipline that national and municipal governments need to secure optimal and symbiotic relationships in the developmental process. IFC can assist governments design and implement triple Ps that help achieve national development goals. It can help improve the business environment through advisory on reform that promote private investment. They work with governments and the private sector to build well-functioning capital markets. Ladies and gentlemen, the IFC has noted Botswana's strong interest in triple Ps, in SOE reform, and in the development of modernized infrastructure projects. And so we will consider their wider advisory engagement with government for SOEs and for our triple P projects. In this regard, let us take advantage of today's forum and brainstorm on how best we can collaborate with them in driving growth, particularly in the private sector. It is our hope that the IFC will also elaborate on their latest product offerings in sectors including manufacturing, agribusiness and services, infrastructure, and resources in general. It is our hope that the outcome of this forum will shape how the IFC collaborates with Botswana through a model that is systematic, that is evidence-based, and that is focused on inclusive growth. A model that we hope will strengthen competitiveness, will create more and better paying jobs, and raise living standards for our people. So I encourage all of you today to engage fully in the discussions. I encourage all of you to share openly, to share boldly, substantive ideas on how this partnership can ensue and move Botswana forward. I am confident that with the expertise and the experience gathered under this room, our dialogue will be frank, insightful, and fruitful. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these few remarks, I once again welcome all of you to this important event. This is our moment to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, to summon our resilience, and to work together to build a new Botswana. Welcome to Botswana. Welcome to this great process of building the best managed country on the African continent, the paragon of fairness, unity, and inclusive prosperity on the African continent. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President and Minister of Finance, for these inspiring words. We will follow up with a fireside chat between the CEO of Business Botswana, Mr. Norman Molele, and the IFC Regional Director for Southern Africa, Ms. Claudia Conceição. If you'd like to come to the podium. Thank you.
Check 1, 2, 1. It's working.
Good morning everyone. My name is Claudia Conceição. I'm the Regional Director for Southern Africa at IFC, International Finance Corporation, the institution of the World Bank Group that supports private sector. But supporting private sector always with the ultimate aim of supporting the governments of our various member states through private sector development. It's really an honor to be here today. It's always an honor to come back to Botswana, so Dumelang, everyone. And I have the pleasure to have my good friend from Business Botswana here. So Norman, I even don't know your surname, so don't bother by the lack of formality on my side, because we have been talking for quite some time and enjoying some honest conversations, right, Norman? So just thank you very much to accept this challenge of coming here and speak to us, or speak with me in front of everybody. Let me start by poking you and ask you, Norman, how do you describe private sector in Botswana right now?
Thank you very much, Claudia. I think for you to remember my surname, I'll translate it for you.
Please.
The tall one. So always remember that, the tall one. That's what it means. Maybe let me start off with salutations and say all protocol observed, that I recognize the Vice President and Business Botswana President and all leadership here, CEOs of private sector companies. I'm honored to be representing Business Botswana this morning in this fireside chat. An interesting fireside chat where there's only 2 people around the fire. First, let me talk about Business Botswana, and then I'll flow over to attempt to answer your question. But as we discussed earlier on, this is an exchange. It's a discussion. It's an engagement. It's not a question and answer, type of arrangement. But let me say that as most of us would know, Business Botswana has been in this business of advocating for business-friendly environment for over 55 years. We've been the unifying voice of business, and we are advocating for an environment where enterprise can thrive, where jobs can be created, and the nation can prosper. And much has been said about the need to stimulate the economy. And research clearly points out that diversification will only be successful if the private sector is in the forefront, and private sector is the catalyst. We are discussing this at a time when Botswana is going under a process, the Botswana Economic Transformation Plan or Program. And I should say, to quote one of my private sector members, my leaders, this is the best thing that has ever happened to this country, the BETP. It gives us hope that the long-standing obstacles that private sector has been experiencing in the country will be dealt with. And we have been, as Business Botswana, in the forefront of advocating for an enabling environment. And today's conversation reinforces our shared commitment to provide private sector-led growth. Just to give the audience context who Business Botswana is, we're a business association. We're an association of private sector where our members extend from the micro enterprises or the informal sector, as they are sometimes called. We've got small enterprises, medium-sized, large businesses, and even international players who are members of the organization. And it will please you to know that at least 76% of our members are the small businesses. 16% are medium-sized businesses, and 7% are the large businesses. And only 1% are business associations who are affiliated with Business Botswana. That's why we are called Business Botswana. But to answer your question, our private sector, I would say, is well developed. It's a private sector that is ready to be Botswana's driving force behind economic growth. Obviously, the diamond sector has led the growth of the country, but the non-diamond sector, such as agriculture, and most of which are priorities in the BETP program, are key sectors that should lead, growth in this country. While government is, at the moment, the major consumer or the major contributor to GDP, that's a challenge which private sector is facing. But I can say it's an opportunity for private sector to seize. As we speak, government contributes 40% of GDP. Consumption is at around 28 to 30% of GDP as of 2023. And this is nearly double the global median of 16%. Government employs at least 2/3 of the formerly employed in the country, while the other 1/3 is employed by Business Botswana members. We make a significant contribution in employment in the country. However, despite where we are in terms of employing so many, at least 1/3 of the formerly employed in Botswana, our growth has slowed down to about 2%. And all this is stifled by competition for talent, resources, and crowding out by government. And maybe let me put a disclaimer here. These are things that we experienced over the past years. And like I said, with the BETP, we are hoping all this will be a thing of the past. It will be history. We will see a different Botswana, going forward. And we strongly believe, and I think you should all join me in congratulating the new government, the leadership, in taking this bold step of going ahead with the Botswana Economic Transformation Plan, which will talk to our National Development 12, plan as well. So for me, going forward, with the strong private sector that we have, which we believe we have as well, which has been advocating for a better business environment for a long time, all what we've been saying is now being captured under the BETP. Because there's a lot of our members who are participating in the labs that are ongoing at the Bureau of Standards. And a lot is being discovered, a lot is going to be changed, and we're excited about it. And Vice President of the Republic of Botswana, we congratulate you and we thank you for having taken that bold step.
Very good. In reflection on what you said, Norman, one of the things that really strikes me is that Botswana has, over the time, enjoyed macroeconomic stability, is a country with a, so as I said, is a country that have enjoyed macroeconomic stability over the time, is a country that have enjoyed investment grade over the time, is a country with a strong and well-capitalized financial sector. If I'm not mistaken, with the highest capitalized, sorry, it confused me to have here right in front of me. But if not, I'm not mistaken, with the most well-capitalized stock exchange in the continent, is a country with a good appetite for reforms. The government is there, willing to do the right thing. And what strikes me is on what is happening, that private sector is not yet taking the lead in the economic in the economy of the country. So we understand diamonds have been, historically in the forefront of the economy, but this is not sustainable, right? It cannot continue like this. And there is a role that, in my view, the government have to play. And the government really have to set the stage in order to attract private investment. And in Botswana has taken some important steps in it. And that's exactly where reforms matter the most. And for me, this day, it's exactly not only to have the IFC teams coming and talking, as Mr. Vice President mentioned in his address, about what is our offer, but also to hear from the teams on the challenges that are out there, that private sector face, in order to actually be more active on the ground, because that's where we all together can work in terms of recommendations to the government on the reforms that need to be implemented to make private sector to develop and to thrive in the country. So that's one of the things that I really would like to bring to this conversation. And the second one is on the role of IFC. How can IFC come and contribute? We don't only contribute with capital, with financing, but we also contribute with knowledge, and we also contribute in bringing confidence to the projects and confidence to the markets. And the way we operate, we don't only operate by financing or supporting big projects, but we also support smaller players through our financial institutions. And our role is through supporting with capital, capacity, and confidence. But in the context of Botswana, we really want to learn from everybody, from Business Botswana and from everybody on the room, on how to make it happen in a way that is sustainable and that is effective, looking at the particular context of the country. So from your perspective, from a local perspective, what would you comment? Because I have this question normally, everything is there. So what's missing?
I always say all the ingredients are there. It's about just doing it. We know what needs to be done. I could share with you, say 3 pathways that would spur private sector investment. And it's nothing different from what, the Vice President said in his opening remarks. We're talking about triple Ps. We're talking about the business environment. There are so many areas, so many elements around the business environment that need to be looked into. And it's about, creating a stable and transparent investment framework. And where is Business Botswana in all this? Where is private sector in all this? I am going to, in front of everybody here, give you this booklet. It's our private sector development strategy and private sector development program, which we intend as Business Botswana to take the lead in implementing. And we would like the IFC to come to the party and join us in rolling out all that we've outlined in there.
I can see our partner in Africa is here.
You see, we're already ahead. The plan rests on 5 key pillars. We're talking about economic diversification and export expansion, which the Vice President talked about. We're talking about industrial capacity and value chains, which the Vice President talked about. We're talking about SMME development and mainstreaming the informal sector. I should say at this point that we pride ourselves as Business Botswana with having taken the initiative to bring the informal sector to the forefront, as indicated in that booklet. And on the ground, we have afforded the Informal Sector Association of Botswana, BOISA, an office at Business Botswana where we are working with them to build their capacity, to guide them, to show them the way on the development path that we want to take as a country. So we are already doing it. We're talking about competitiveness and productivity. That's pillar number 4. And we're talking about private sector participation in national strategy implementation. Our private sector is actively involved in the BETP program. Our private sector is actively involved in various policy-making bodies or committees that we have in the country. We're actively involved in the different platforms that need our voice to be heard, that need our input, that need the intellect from private sector, to build a robust economy, for this country. So as we say, this private sector development plan and the private sector development strategy, they align very clearly and very directly with the Botswana's Vision 2036, which our true north comes from. And as I said before, the National Transformation Strategy, with the BETP rolling out, that's the best thing that has happened to us. And with IFC's mission of promoting inclusive private sector growth, I'm sure we can roll out, beautiful things for this country if we join hands.
Indeed.
I hope I've answered you.
No, thank you. And I'm also sure that with our capabilities and not only from a balance sheet perspective, our ability to finance, and also with our expertise, as I mentioned before, and with our ability of bringing even additional confidence to investors in the country, that together I believe that we can join forces. Now, if I know that in the beginning you said that you don't want to make it a question and an answer discussion, but for our benefit as IFC, IFC has been trying to be active and to invest with scale in Botswana, looking for for more opportunities. We have a couple of investments, very successful investments yet, but we are not yet very strong in the market. From your perspective, you listen from the various players in the market. Why is it that we are not doing much more in the country? What are the practical challenges from your perspective?
There are quite a number of elements that we need to look into. I talked about the reforms that we need. I talked about the triple Ps. We are not yet there. And with the IFC that I know, I'm aware that, today you probably will be unraveling, the new direction that the IFC will be taking. But with the IFC that I have known for years, you've been a big ticket institution for a very long time. What you provide was not going to be absorbed by a lot of our enterprises here, because the size of activities or projects that we're going to undertake would find that to be too much to deal with. And with the absence of the PPP model or PPP projects, which usually would take huge sums of money, infrastructure, projects, for example, there's nothing else that one can do. I mean, if I'm going to start a manufacturing plant, for example, and I want to make margarine, I think the $50 million that I knew IFC would say is the minimum that we can take would just be too much for that. But like I said, maybe today you will unravel something that we've been waiting to hear, which will then enable us to identify opportunities of working with the IFC, to lower the ticket size of the investments that people can do, and to enable even the medium-sized enterprises to access those resources. The subject of access to finance has always been topical, and it will remain to be topical until we deal with it comprehensively. And I believe that with what you will tell us, I hope you will talk about how we can access resources, from your end, in addition to what is already in place, from our banks and other development finance institutions.
No, it's a great point, and exactly in recognition of that challenge, I don't want to say as a failure of how we have been operating as a World Bank Group in terms of support to private sector, but more in recognition of how we can do better to achieve more impact. IFC has really reviewed its focus. I don't want to be speaking about strategy, but the focus, while the recognition and the understanding now and going forward is that while infrastructure will remain at the core, because you need road access, you need power, you need connectivity, you need water access to have any successful business, while that will remain at the core. But we are also centering around the SME conversation or the MSME conversation, because we are recognizing that the ecosystem and the supply chains are fundamental if you want to have a thriving private sector to create more jobs that are to tackle the unemployment challenge across different markets. So this conversation is there, and today everybody will hear that the focus is not only on the big ticket deals as Norman just mentioned, but we're also coming with solutions on how to support MSMEs, obviously through platforms, through financial institutions. So we're working closely with the banks exactly to have these sorts of platforms developed in specific sectors. And one of that may be even more advanced is on the agriculture space, because it's not only enough to support the big commercial players, but the success in agriculture will be exactly on how to be able to support the smaller players or the small farm holders that also have activity and they provide goods to the market. So yes, the thinking to answer to your challenge, that is a real challenge. And in Africa, it's very visible because of the scale of the different markets that is relatively small to the big markets in Europe and in Asia and in the Americas. We have a thinking process that is changing, and we have a lot of, I don't want to use the word pressure, but yes, we have being asked by our leadership to really pay attention on the SME side of things, and there are practical examples including on Botswana, on how we are tackling this particular challenging. So it's good time, good momentum for us to have this conversation. The teams will be here presenting this suite of products and services, and it's for all of us together to see how best to leverage on it to make it successful in the country.
Thank you. If you allow me.
Thank you very much.
My final statement is to say that Botswana is a competitive investment destination. We have the support infrastructure. We have various incentives, liberal tax regime, duty rebates, you name it. Our time is now. And we believe that with all this that we have, including the supporting resources, in the CESAs, the BITCs, and all other players in the market, there's a lot that we can do and turn things around, for this country. Therefore, for me, I call upon government to deepen reforms, to ease regulatory barriers, and to co-create strategies with us in the private sector. And I'm looking at the IFC and development partners to continue investing and providing technical expertise. And business leaders, let's step up. Let's do it. Once the environment has been created, let's do it. And let's come out very openly, very clearly where there are impediments, and let's make sure we work together with our leadership to create that soft landing, to provide that red carpet for whoever would like to grow this economy with us and create the much-needed employment for our youth, to provide an investment climate which will allow aspiring entrepreneurs to play that active role that we expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for me, it's, yes, all the conditions are there, but there is a key ingredient. That is the salt in the food, right? We can have the best, but if there is no salt, there is no flavor. That is the political will. In Botswana, it's there. You have a government that is a mind of reforms, that is willing to implement reforms, and is willing to take bold steps. So let's leverage on it. So Botswana is not just competitive, but the fact that there is a government that have the political will makes it a compelling case for investors who want both stability, a stable environment to operate, and opportunities. So Botswana have all that it's required for a thriving private sector. And with the support of the government that is here and is willing to listen to all of us to make it happen, so I really would like to say, yes, let's work together with Business Botswana, with the various players, with the government, with the World Bank institutions, with other partners, because alone we will not reach there, but we need the whole village to succeed. Let's make it happen, and we are ready to support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Claudia and Norman, for this interesting chat. The only thing that was missing was the actual fire, but you laid out some of the challenges and the opportunities quite well. We will now take a photo with the Vice President and the Minister of Finance and the high table present here, just outside, and then we will proceed with the rest of the event. So if the Vice President and Minister of Finance, my colleagues, Norman, could follow me. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience, and I would like to call on our colleagues to come, I guess, one by one as they present to the stage. We will have a series of presentations over the next, let's say, 45 minutes or so on, as mentioned, our various industry groups, and the ones that will be talking are essentially our manufacturing and services group, our agribusiness group, and our infrastructure and natural resources group, which includes mining. There will also be a quick overview of IFC, just in case there are some, I guess, queries on who we are and what we do. So I would like to ask my colleague Bankole to come to the stage.
Good morning. My name is Bankole Oshituyo. I'm a senior investment officer with IFC's Financial Institutions Group, covering Southern Africa, including Botswana. I'm based in Johannesburg. I'm going to provide a very quick intro to the World Bank Group for those of us that may not be as familiar with the group. So the World Bank Group actually comprises 5 institutions. What we would commonly call the World Bank actually comprises the IBRD, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and the International Development Association. These 2 institutions combined provide investments and advice to national governments. IBRD focuses on middle-income countries and what we would call lower-income countries, but higher in the credit spectrum. Botswana would fall into that category of middle-income country and hopefully transition away up into the high-income countries soon. The IDA provides interest-free loans and grants to lower income countries, so basically the poorest countries. Both are owned by 189 member countries. We also have a third institution called MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. MIGA's role is to promote foreign direct investments into developing countries by providing non-commercial risk mitigation, mostly focused around political risk. So you think about issues around transfer and convertibility risk, issues around expropriation risk. And this is to give international investors that are looking to come into developing markets a little more comfort that their assets and their investments will be free from political interference. We have a fourth institution called ICSID. I'm not going to try to say it in full, but basically they promote, again, foreign direct investments by basically helping to settle investment disputes that may arise between national governments and investors. And today we have focused on the 5th pillar of the group, which is the International Finance Corporation. We are mostly focused on the private sector. We also do work with municipalities. Together, the 5 institutions work to support World Bank Group's twin goals. the eradication of extreme poverty, and boosting shared prosperity. In the case of Botswana, I think the focus is on boosting shared prosperity. So we're basically present in 100 countries. So even though we are international, we like to see ourselves as local. And basically this tells you a lot about how much impact we've tried to make through deploying our investments since we were created. We have a unique combination of services and products. What we're most known for is investments, but money can be gotten from almost anyone. I think our unique advantage is our ability to also provide technical advice. IFC as an expert in almost anything and everything that you could think about when it comes to private sector economic development. And we are also able to tap into the institutional knowledge across the group as needed. On the investment side, I like to think of us as basically being able to provide any solutions that would support job creation and private sector development. So we're able to provide almost all kinds of financing solutions, from equity all the way to trade finance. On the advisory side, we also have both generalist and also sector advisory colleagues. So we have colleagues that are specialists and experts on every single sector that you can, where we operate. And we also have what we call our country advisory and economics unit. And this team provides internal economic advice for IFC, but more importantly, they go beyond what the World Bank colleagues would typically do when they're providing advice. So World Bank colleagues would provide advice to sovereigns. This team then can support governments in implementing reforms that are proposed or agreed with the World Bank. And they're able to do that looking at reforms through the lens of the private sector. So they make it more pragmatic. And lastly, we've moved beyond waiting for clients or sponsors to come to us. We realized that in a lot of countries where we operate, we need to go in and create markets. And this will typically take 2 to 5 years before you're able to actually identify specific investment opportunities that would support economic development and jobs. And that is what we cover under our upstream. So this is basically a summary of our value proposition. I think the key takeaway is that it is not just about money for us, it's about impact. And the impact that we're able to achieve is mostly promoted through technical advice. And that is the unique value proposition that we bring to our member countries, because we're able to bring in global best practice and our global knowledge into clients, private sector institutions within our member countries. Our investments are also structured mostly to crowd in international investors. So there's a lot of focus on not just IFC deploying its own resources, but also crowding in monies from developed markets into developing countries, because we do not have all of the resources that we need to address the issues that we need to address in our member countries, in our countries where we are active. This is basically the process all of our investment projects go through. It's not very dissimilar to what you would find in most investment institutions. One of the things that may be unique, though, is that every single one of our projects are publicly disclosed. So it's pretty easy to see what we're doing across the globe. In our last fiscal year, we did $71 billion of investments into our countries where we invest. More than half of that were from our investment partners. And that is why we're able to make more impact. Our ability to mobilize capital that may otherwise be shy or worried about coming into the countries where we operate. With about $15 billion coming into Africa, IFC may very well be one of the single largest investors on the continent. And there's a lot more that we can do. This is only a tip of what is really needed to achieve the kind of impact that we hope to achieve in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bankole. And you already know who the next speaker is. Ngodia is actually from Botswana, and I would like to ask him to come on stage, please.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for the introduction. And Bankole, thank you very much for laying the foundation in terms of IFC's product suite. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Ngodia Chimbwete here. To some, my name might spark some curiosity, but allow me to clarify. I'm proudly Botswana, born and raised, educated in Botswana, and I spent majority of my career in Botswana before joining IFC. I'm currently an investment officer within the IFC based in Johannesburg, and I'm part of the team that covers manufacturing and consumer services across Africa. My role in IFC spans across the entire investment value chain. So from origination to execution and to portfolio management of transactions across the investment products that IFC offers. So from debt to equity and everything in between. Today, I'm excited to share with you IFC's experience, investment capabilities, and strategic approach across these key sectors that are important for Africa's development. So since 1999, IFC has invested over $10 billion in manufacturing and services across Africa. And our portfolio is quite diverse. It spans across, so in manufacturing, we support base materials like manufacturing of cement, glass, metals, fertilizer, and construction materials. And on the light manufacturing side, these include things like textiles and apparel and machinery. On the consumer services side, we cover tourism, retail, and property. So we invest in hotels, shopping centers, offices, mixed-use developments, and housing, both on the affordable housing side and specialized housing, so things like student accommodation. In healthcare, our investments cover healthcare services and operators, life sciences, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, and distribution. And in education, we support tertiary institutions, edtech platforms, and student financing solution platforms. So from a manufacturing perspective, what we've seen is that economies that have have a diverse range of sophisticated products through advanced production processes and integrated value chains are considered to have high economic complexity. And this economic complexity is a strong predictor of long-term economic growth. So for example, countries like Germany and the likes of Switzerland would be up the economic complexity curve. However, in the case of Africa, many African countries currently operate in the low economic complexity index. So this is characterized by shallow supply chains and high import dependency. But in Africa, we've got, the continent's strong demographics and rapid urbanization and regional integration and infrastructure investments present a unique window of opportunity to scale up and diversify production. IFC's approach in manufacturing is guided by the complexity triangle, which aligns country-specific strategies with global best practices, ensuring that interventions are both locally relevant and globally impactful. And currently, IFC's manufacturing portfolio is mainly concentrated in commodities and resource-based countries, and this reflects our strong focus on developing and emerging countries. So through targeted investments, IFC aims to strengthen production scale, complexity in developing countries, and supporting countries to move up the value chain and deepen supply chain networks and build resilience against global shocks. So this slide just gives you an illustration of how much IFC has committed in manufacturing globally during our financial year ended June 2025. So we committed about $4.1 billion globally across the diversified manufacturing subsectors. And as you can see, Africa is the bulk of our portfolio. On the tourism, retail, and property side, our focus is in investing in sectors that drive job creation, economic inclusion, and climate resilience, while also addressing supply and demand gaps. Tourism, we focus on all types of hotels, so business, leisure, and ecotourism lodges. On the retail side, we focus on increasing access to affordable and high-quality products, especially in underserved areas, by investing in fast-moving consumer goods retail, do-it-yourself construction, and hardware retail outlets. On the property side, we have a strong focus on housing. So we seek to help increase the supply of affordable and quality housing to low and middle income households. On the education side, our focus is to scale higher education and technical vocational education to improve access, quality, and labor market relevance. Investing in emerging technologies such as EdTech and digital transformation. We also focus on public-private partnerships by mobilizing private capital for education infrastructure and service delivery. On the healthcare side, IFC's health strategy focuses on expanding access to quality and affordable healthcare in emerging markets, while fostering resilient healthcare systems and supporting universal health coverage. So now to illustrate IFC's product range across manufacturing and consumer services, this slide just shows you some examples of notable and recent transactions that we have concluded. Like it was mentioned earlier on, in some cases, we invest or partner with financial intermediaries such as banks and asset managers to broaden our reach towards targeted sectors. and especially in cases where making direct investments may be constrained by scale and sector fragmentation. So this can be seen in our investment. This can be seen in our 1 billion rand investment in the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa, where IFC anchored and subscribed to IDC's first sustainable bond issuance. So IDC is a development finance institution that provides financing as small as $50,000 US, mainly to South Africa's manufacturing sector. And given the fragmentation of South Africa's manufacturing sector, having many SMEs that are typically too small for IFC's ticket sizes, the IFC proceeds were targeted towards making social and green investments to SMEs in the manufacturing sector, focusing on marginalized groups such as women and youth. Another good example where we worked through a financial intermediary was through a financial intermediary to broaden our reach towards a targeted sector can be seen in our investment in Africa Conservation and Communities Tourism Fund, in short ACCT Fund. IFC invested $13 million US to support ecotourism businesses in and around conservation areas in East and Southern Africa, with a strong focus on Botswana, South Africa, Kenya, Namibia, Tanzania, and Zambia. The ACCT Fund invests in operators of safari camps, hotels, lodges, and lodges, helping them to address liquidity shortages while recovering from the impact of COVID-19. The fund is also helping them to refurbish, renovate, and expand their operations, especially where the businesses can achieve meaningful conservation and community development. Another example could be seen of IFC support for small businesses is through its partnership with Absa Bank in South Africa to provide working capital and short-term funding to suppliers of ArcelorMittal. ArcelorMittal is Africa's largest steel products producer. And ArcelorMittal has over 200 suppliers, most of which are SMEs, that often struggle to access financing. Through this agreement, eligible suppliers of ArcelorMittal that have outstanding invoices can sell their invoices to Absa Bank in exchange for immediate funding to support their operations. When these invoices are due, Absa collects payment directly from ArcelorMittal, and if ArcelorMittal fails to pay on that, to honor those invoices, IFC shares on that risk on a 50-50 basis. So that's another good example how we supported SMEs that are linked to the manufacturing supply chain. On the equity side, to showcase our capabilities, examples include IFC's investment in Respublica student living, where we invested about 19 million US dollars for a 20% stake, and our funding was really to support Respublica to roll out purpose-built student accommodation across South Africa. And this was important given that in South Africa, student enrollment rates are growing at a faster rate than the supply of housing. So this was to ensure quality education for students have access to quality education. We also made an investment in Boxer, where we were the cornerstone investor in the recent IPO, which was the largest IPO in South Africa since 2018. And so Boxer is essentially a discount retailer, and we supported them in rolling out the store footprint in underserved areas in South Africa. On the debt side, we provided a 1 billion rand senior loan to Bowen Properties, to build 16,000 affordable housing units to sell in South Africa, and these units were green certified through IFC's Excellence in Design for Greater Efficiencies tool, which is a global standard and certification system for green buildings. So in closing, I'd just like to say that Botswana holds a lot of potential for further industrialization and to transform the services sector. And IFC stands ready to partner with local businesses, investors, and policymakers to unlock this potential through strategic and impactful investments. I think together we can build a resilient value chains and expand access to essential services and create inclusive growth that reaches every corner of the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ngodia. And as you can see, there's quite a series of transactions we have done. If you have more questions, I'm sure Ngodia would be happy to answer them. We shall move on to the agribusiness side of our corporation. So if I can ask my colleague Hope to come on stage.
Thank you. Proceeding from what my colleagues have built on, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Hope Pachena. I cover agribusiness for Africa, based in Lusaka. So I think when you think about it, what can I say? I'm the only presenter in IFC who is going to present an interesting topic. Why am I saying so? Every day, before we go anywhere, we need to eat. So this is very interesting and very important for the country as well. So I'll start with the slide. Okay, so I'm going to focus more on examples. I've looked at Botswana, and from what I've seen as I see what we've done in Africa, we can do more in this space in agribusiness. So my slide that you are seeing there is more focusing on pre-investment support that we do in agribusiness. What do we do when I say pre-investment? We work with established firms that are in Botswana to develop projects. For example, let's say Botswana is importing onions. I'll start with that, an example with onions. I'll touch on onions. We had a company in Sierra Leone that was importing onions for about 15 years. And they approached us as IFC that we need to produce our onion in Sierra Leone. What can we do? So we sat together and analyzed the cost. What is the cost of landing the onion from Europe into Sierra Leone? Then from then, we started designing the project to say, how can we produce onion competitively in the country? So this is the case. Why I'm saying this, it's very important that whatever we do, it needs to be driven by a need for the country. Any country cannot survive by importing key food items like green vegetables, which was the case then. So for a case like Botswana, we really need to work with the CEOs who are here, who are CEOs of those companies that are importing those commodities, especially the large retailers. You can approach us and we can sit to say how can we produce those commodities here in the country. So that's basically what we do in the pre-investment support. We start with pre-development, where we'll do a market study, market assessment to say how much of the onions does Botswana need, and then from there we work backwards to say, okay, this is the market, so how can we produce the onion locally by doing pre-feasibility studies, where, as I've said, market scoping, and then we do what are the legal and regulatory requirements that need to be looked at to address the problem. Then from then, we move now to where we develop the project together to set it up. The very most important thing is that through this, which I'll touch, I think I'll give you another example, we also try to work with the smallholder farmers, which is the issue that has been raised. I think, how can we support those small businesses? But for us to support these smallholder farmers, they need access to a market. That's why we try to work it backwards from the large players. We have a need for that product, whom we now work with going backwards. A good example I want to give here is Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, there was a barley company called Sofle. It's a global player in the brewed beer. What they did was, when this company started in Ethiopia, they were importing all their barley requirements from other markets. No barley was produced in Ethiopia, zero barley. And when they come to us, we designed a program to help them source their barley locally. And it took us up to 6 years to be able to source the barley locally. And as I speak today, that company sources its barley 100% from Ethiopia, from 75,000 smallholder farmers, which is very impactful. I think, as mentioned earlier, the impact there, I can tell you, if we have quantified it, it has changed the livelihood of those smallholder farmers, but the country also is saving on foreign currency because it doesn't need to import any barley. And then I'm moving on to the next stage, which I've spoken about, where we develop the project together to financial close to strengthen the supply chain and whatever we'll be doing together. And then after that, we go to financing of the project. So I think another example I want to mention, which is very, very key for Botswana low-hanging fruit, is the beef sector, where I know it's a very important sector for the country, but the smallholder farmers, beef farmers, have a huge role to play. But what we need is, they need the market. For this to succeed, they need the market. And this market must be a private sector player who is a processor, or who is in retail, who is also selling beef and processed beef, who can now come to us to say, how can I strengthen my supply chain for beef, which I believe is also not as strong as enough. So we work with that player and then develop that supply chain to strengthen it. So my message, I think, to you is that I'm appealing to you CEOs who are here, that for us to have an impact, for your business to actually have a strong supply chain, we can work together to develop a supply chain, whichever commodities I've mentioned. If you are importing from South Africa or wherever you're importing from, you can approach us. We sit together, we look at your current issues, your problems, what is making you not being able to procure locally, and then we can work together to develop that supply chain. Then my last slide is on the platforms. As IFC, we have created 5 global platforms in the agribusiness sector. Basically, we created them to bring our global expertise and knowledge to our clients. And as you can see there, we've got 5 platforms: the food safety and food loss and waste, which we can work with you established players to make sure you are certified so that you can export. I think it was mentioned that there's also need for Botswana to export. So ideally, if you're in the food sector, you can't export if you are not certified with a certain certification for a certain commodity. Then the next one is sustainable crop production, where we work with your supply chain farmers, strengthening their agronomy support and all their climate smart agriculture to make sure they produce according to global standards. Then we also do sustainable protein, which is the beef sector I've actually mentioned earlier on for Botswana, which we also do productivity benchmarks. And we also try to make sure you comply with biosecurity requirements as you run your operations. Then we also have smallholder supply chain, which is quite critical. I think I've touched on this one when I gave you the 3 examples, where we can work with you to strengthen the supply chains. Then the last one is climate, which we can do GHG accounting, greenhouse gas emissions, that's what calls GHG, where we can measure with you. We say this is your baseline, and we assist you to say, to achieve this, we need to do certain projects that will help you reduce this GHG footprint. Then we also have a cross-cutting solutions, which are gender, resource efficiency, decarbonization. Resource efficiency, basically we come to your existing operation and assess your energy, the way you are using your energy, and then see where do you need to improve so that you save on energy, you save on water, all those, so that you become very efficient compared to other global players. And as my earlier presenter has mentioned, we are a global player, and by working us, you also get access to this global knowledge, because we have done so much business with businesses like what we are doing globally. So you tend to tap into that knowledge. Yeah, I think with this, I'll have to stop here, but just to say that the country, I think Botswana has got immense potential in terms of agri. The low-hanging fruits being the beef value chain, which I have mentioned. What we only need, I think, all the value chain is we need an off-taker that we can work with, and then we work backwards to try and onboard the smallholder farmers into the value chain, which makes it easier because they've got access to the market, and we can develop those farmers to become global producers. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. And I know agriculture is a big priority for the government here, so we certainly look forward to working with local companies on developing value chains in the various sectors. The next speaker is going to be Heidi from our Infrastructure and Natural Resources group. She's going to be talking about infrastructure indeed, but also about mining, the mining offering that we have at IFC. Heidi, if I can ask you to come on stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Heidi Akran. I'm part of the Africa Infrastructure Group, and I'm based out of Johannesburg. Very pleased to be with all of you today, and I'm just going to go through what we're doing in the infrastructure space in Africa. So, I'm sorry. Thank you. As you can see, we basically cover all infrastructure sectors within Africa, and a lot of the power and the mining that was mentioned earlier as part of the 9 sectors of priority for Botswana are also included. We pride ourselves as being one of the largest infrastructure investors on the continent. And we have been looking at just seeing ways on how we can expand our infrastructure activities. In Botswana, 2 years ago, in December 2003, we closed our first investment in the Madinair solar PV project, and we had a follow-up role in that. We're also looking to support the solar tenders that were released earlier on in the year. We supported a lot of the developers that bid for those projects. I think the sectors of power, transport, telecom, mining, and municipalities, these are very what we call our focus sectors. We have a window here where we can directly support municipalities and utilities, because what we see in Africa, that a lot of infrastructure is still delivered by municipalities or state-owned entities. So we developed a window to see whether we could do some direct investments with these municipalities and utilities. Now, on this slide, I think all my colleagues previously have focused on it. And if you're going to take away anything today, I want to point out to IFC's very strong, what we call our upstream co-development opportunity product. It's a very, very powerful tool. It basically allows for us to help partner with an entity to pre-develop the project. And a lot of times when we see projects, the issue is the development capital or the technical expertise needed to make a project bankable. So this is a very, very powerful tool that we have, a co-development. I have another colleague that's coming on later on to talk about the advisory, but we can look to co-develop. We have up to 8 million per project to put as development capital, and we can look to co-develop to 50% of the development capital for projects. And we have used this tool to unlock a lot of infrastructure projects that were stuck, very large infrastructure projects. So the Natigal Hydro in Cameroon, we used this co-development tool. We worked for about 4 years to be able to bring that project to the market. We did a lot of the feasibility studies, the planning. Patimanga in Malawi as well is another project, the 350 megawatt hydro project in which we played a co-developer role. And that project was tendered out to the market and now is taken up by private sector to develop this project going forward. So that tool is super important for us. I'm a big fan of it. And the other parties are advisory, and which my colleagues talked about. And sometimes it's not so easy to figure out a way of how do we navigate the options. And we used this advisory in South Africa. A few years ago, there was a generation tender, and about 3,000 to 5,000 megawatts could not be allocated because of transmission constraints. We had an advisory team working with the government there to present options for bringing private sector in, and really pleased that the RFP for that transmission projects was released, and we expect the RFP later on in the year. So I'm just going to speak about this mining slide. When we look at a sector, I think the first point we make, we invest directly in the sector. But it's not just that sector that we're looking. We look at the entire value chain, because you don't want to have a stranded asset, or we want to make sure that that product gets where it needs to go. So in terms of mining, we look at, first of all, power is a big issue for mines. They're a large consumer of power. So we're looking to support power developers looking to provide power to mines. These are C&I clients. Then we also look at the infrastructure related to the mines. So typically when we're investing in mines, how do you get your product to your market? You need a railway to be able to transport. You need the ports, etc. So we also then look at down the value chain. To see that we can invest in the railway or the ports that's needed. And also water is increasingly becoming an issue, and particularly for Botswana, where the water is scarce. So the ability to recycle the water, reuse the water within the mines, that is an important sector for us. And I guess when we see the big themes that we see, that's for the big themes that are coming through, which are the batteries, EVs, green hydrogen, we are looking to see how can we then look to support, because these are not going away. There's growth in batteries, EVs, green hydrogen, and the mining sector is really, really key to be able to support the development of these other industries. And Botswana has a lot of the metals, which is the copper, nickel, that is required for these industries. So there's a good opening there. And the last one I wanted to touch on was just the circular economy. This one, we're increasingly seeing the end of life for assets, etc. So how do we recycle this and so that it doesn't become an issue? One of the ways we're exploring the recycling of electronics as well, and acid water within South Africa. Okay. And I think another point, one other important point, when we do, you might hear, oh, IFC might be not easy to work with, but one point I have to say that a lot of these players that we put are repeat clients. We look to partner with our clients in the long term. We don't see our clients as a one-off investment and that we walk away. We are there to help us support our clients to grow, and we do repeat investments with our clients, and we usually partner with them for several years. So many of these players that we see, we've done repeat investments with them, and that's another key point to take away. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the engagement on Botswana.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Actually, on the picture here, we have a beautiful example of a bridge here in Botswana, an excellent example of infrastructure that is being built. We do have time for questions. There will be colleagues going around the room with microphones. So please ask questions to the various colleagues who have been speaking. You can also ask questions to me. So who would like to start? Any specific question? I see a hand over there, Vikash.
Good morning, thank you, Marcus. Maybe just a quick question that was raised from the fireside chat and earlier. The challenge with Botswana has always been not the access to capital, but the access to risk-based capital. And the fact that the market size in Botswana, as Norman alluded to during the fireside chat, doesn't make for the ticket sizes that institutions such as the IFC normally coming in wanting to invest. Now, I looked at the examples that were provided there of the billion rands and the $19 million, etc., which are all great figures, but for the average SMME or even some of the larger institutions in Botswana, for them to absorb that sort of value makes it very difficult. So maybe from any one of the colleagues on the IFC side, what can be done to mitigate that? Because unless we can actually have access to risk-based capital in Botswana, we can't build the market. And it's only when you start building the market from grassroots level up can you actually go through. I think it is required, obviously, that we have an enabling environment, which we hope the process that the government is going through at the moment will remove over-regulation that we've got, change the paradigm in terms of why we're doing things and how we're doing things in Botswana. But even once all of that is done, unless we have people with the appetite for patient risk-based capital, we're not going to go anywhere anytime fast. And I would like to know from the IFC side, how do they think that they're going to be able to address this and deal with it? Because unfortunately, traditional banking intermediaries, with no offense to my banking colleagues sitting in the crowd, deal with securitized and fully collateralized lending, which is not the bedrock of innovation and building companies. Thank you.
Would one of our colleagues from IFC like to answer the question? We need a microphone. And if I can ask the various presenters to also come on stage, the ones who have presented so far, please. Okay, Kalina can answer, yes.
Audience, a very quick preview of the conversation you and I had over coffee on the other side, and addressing specifically the big elephant in the room that has been raised by many of the colleagues and participants so far in the conference. And there is, in fact, a solution. We discussed two options, and this is what has been alluded to some of the colleagues earlier, of how we use financial intermediation to essentially solve for some of these problems of ticket size, of some of the less mature entities that have to be reached, that are critical to lift up poverty and to achieve shared prosperity in the country. Through financial institutions, traditional financial institutions, beyond funding that's dedicated to MSMEs, we also have different types of guarantee schemes. The benefit of these schemes are twofold to banks and can actually reach the underserved populations or entities within the market. One of those is risk mitigation. So it's not just a first loss, it can be a portfolio structure where we cover more than even 50% of the loss. It's been very useful in a lot of the trade facilities that we scale up throughout the continent for trade types of asset as well as SME short-term and long-term facilities. In addition, these guarantees also provide capital optimization to banks. That provides an additional incentive for them to scale up these asset classes. Typically, these types of schemes are also complemented with technical assistance, because a lot of these SMEs or MSMEs are in very early stages of development. They need technical assistance to essentially become bankable for the traditional financial sector. So from incubators to product development through financial institutions, where at scale we can reach those MSMEs and make them bankable for the financial sector, is a normal component of those programs. Beyond the traditional financial sector, we also look through other types of financial intermediaries, and NJ mentioned some of those, which are not traditional financial services, but funds. And in those funds, we can do structures that allow for blending of different risk type of capital. You would have more donor type of funds that would come and be the longer patient capital or type of first loss. We would also mobilize a lot of different investors with different risk appetite to achieve the same. So there are quite a few examples that we can point to in terms of structures and financial intermediation combined with technical assistance that have been able to achieve exactly what is the question at heart here in Botswana. So happy to explore these as we promised to one another in the coffee break. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, you do have a question as well? Good. Can a microphone be brought over, please?
Thank you, Mr. MC. I don't know whether it's a question or a marination. And whether it's a question or marination, I'm also not asking it. Neither am I marinating as a government man, but as a citizen. I have heard the argument around the lack of risk capital, which is a fact. But that is only one part of a bigger puzzle. You know, risk capital is capital that comes embedded in it, the capacity to analyze risk, the nuanced capacity, and a lot of the institutions and intermediaries in the Botswana ecosystem, they would have the capital, but not necessarily the nuanced capacity to analyze risk. So that's only one part. Then there is the idea of the country, generally speaking, not having capacity to analyze risk, not necessarily capacity to analyze risk that is linked to capital, just capacity in the ecosystem. You have businesses themselves, SMEs, and relatively large businesses here that know what they want to do, that have the capacity to develop their trade, but they don't have the capacity to analyze risk. They don't have the capacity. And so my question is, how do we build the nation's risk analysis capacity and capabilities in general? Part of the answer, but I want to know the rest of the answer. Part of the answer, of course, in the modern world is being provided by big data and new technologies. And if I may give an example on that, there's a project in East Africa which was a data project which was able to collate information for about 20 million farmers about their farms, the fertility of their farms, the performance of their crops, everything, and which database then was used to create algorithms, and right there, new technologies have given us new risk analysis capabilities. So what I would like to know from the IFSC is, do they as an institution handhold or support countries that want to build the general ecosystem and capacity and capabilities around risk, the understanding of risk and capacity around that, so that as a country we are able to generate a more investment-ready investments as a country, as a nation, as businesses, whether small or large, not necessarily waiting for capital that comes with risk analysis, nuanced capabilities. I know it is a nuanced marination stroke question, but having listened to you, I know you have all it takes to answer this one. And I know the agricultural expert who self-professed that he's the only one who has an interesting story. Maybe he can start. Thank you.
Okay, I can thank you, Honorable Vice President. I think I'll start to say we do have, I think in the agribusiness space and even other departments, what we do is IFC, since its inception, it only realized in 2020 that there is so many projects out there which needs, but they are not ready for investment. So what did the IFC do when it realized that? We did form a department, what we call pre-investment or upstream. This department was only created to work with clients, with companies who want to set up new businesses. So the way it was set up to de-risk those ventures, which I think Honorable Vice President mentioned about. So it's basically what we do in the de-risking process. We work with the companies together, IFC and the company, to develop that project to financial close. Also putting our resources, either be human and financial, bringing that into play as well, so that we de-risk this project. And at financial close, we've addressed all the issues, and then when it gets there, as IFC, we can invest, or other investors can come in to invest. I don't know other colleagues if you want to come.
Okay, I think I could complement what my colleague said. The first step is defining the problem. And that helps us to then identify the right specialists and subject matter experts. So when it comes to this issue of risk and how do you develop capacity to assess it, there are definitely people already in Botswana that can do it. A lot of times, maybe what is needed is some convening powers to be able to identify exactly what issue we want them to focus on. Botswana has very strong insurance companies, and these guys have lots of folks that are very good at data analytics and risk assessment. You also have very good bankers not just local bankers, but also bankers that are able to tap into their parent companies. Within the IFC, we have a country advisory and economics unit that basically interfaces between the advice that the World Bank colleagues provide to government and actually bringing in the actual reforms to implement that advice. So I think usually the biggest challenge is defining the problem and then identifying who within the ecosystem is best equipped to convene the right people to find solutions to those problems. And you're right, within the World Bank group, we have a lot of experts once we're able to define what the problem is. But I strongly believe, based on my work in this market, that we also have a lot of capacity within the country to also answer those questions. The bigger challenge is defining it in a way that is specific enough and measurable enough to be able to tackle. That would be my opinion on it. Yeah.
So what I wanted to add was to give like a specific examples of how we do this. So one area that we're looking at is trying to provide access to the unconnected Africans in sub-Saharan Africa. When we looked at this problem, one thing that faced us was data, that we don't have enough data. But one of the practical things we did was we funded and developed a geospatial tool. So we thought that we need to be able to connect, that we're going to use mini-grids, solar home solutions to address the problems of connecting the unconnected. But where are these people? How far are they away from the grid? So we funded the development of a tool. I think it's publicly available. Any developer can go and they can look, they can pick a town, they can see how many people there's there, how far is it from the substation, how far is it from and it has all this information. We launched it at the AEF in May, and I believe that tool should be publicly available. So that was an example of trying to use information, data, and make it available to the public so that developers can plan more effectively. At the same time, we are also looking to develop a Zafiri vehicle to be able to support rolling out of off-grid solutions to connect again for access, mainly for access. And we realize that a lot of these developers are small developers. They don't have the capacity. So the Zafiri vehicle is, first phase is $300 million. And the next phase will be another $300 million. But we said we need to put a facility in here, and we're looking for up to $15 million. What does this facility do? It allows for the investee company, look, maybe they don't have financial capability. Can we help them bring a CFO in at this point to help them plan? Maybe they need ENS, grow their ENS, training on ENS, financial modeling. So these are very practical. And it's just a small drop in the ocean. We need more of these, right? But these are concrete examples of what we're trying to do to de-risk and help grow capacity within the companies that we're investing in. Thank you.
Claudia, would you, Cornelia, can you bring, no, Claudia.
And to complement, and so as Bankole said, it's important to identify the challenge so that we can address. The capability is there. In addition to everything that was said, for example, in some markets it was identified on the challenge that we all talk about, access to finance by smaller companies. Okay, and there is always this question, right? Banks do not provide, or it's difficult to the small player to get access to finance. So together with the country, we identified what are the issues and what are the available pools of funds available, maybe to put together risk-sharing instruments to allow banks to provide finance, right? But as it was said before, it's about identifying the particular challenge and then to see what is available and what is the knowledge that we have, what is the funding that we have, what is the capacity that we have or capability that we have to try to address the challenge. And data, as you said very well, is a powerful tool to identify where the opportunities are and where the beneficiaries are and what are the missing links. And I believe that together we can work on it once we have identified the particular challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Our colleague Nano also wanted to actually answer some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Just to respond to the question, Mr. Vice President, about finding solutions that reduce risk. We have a program which we've set up called the African Accelerator for Agriculture, which we think is a great opportunity for us to talk about. What it does is that it looks at the wide range of stakeholders, smallholder farmers, who need to be reached to reduce food insecurity problems. But to reach them through banks has been very difficult. So what we've done is to apply a platform of digital intermediaries who we finance. Digital intermediaries better address the needs and understand the farmers better. So by aggregating the farmers in large scale, financing them through our banks, we first understand them better. We provide digital solutions which allow them to be financed through digital means and recover their debts easier, but also provide small-scale financing that cannot be done through banks directly. So you have the aggregator, you have the financier, and you have IFC. So ultimately, our AAAP program helps us to address the risk issue, helps us to address the financing issue, and helps us to address the agricultural scarcity of resources issue.
Thank you, Nana. We have time for one more question, perhaps.
Thank you so much. My name is Lebogang William Mweti, and I'm representing a cooperative called TP, a Just Transition in TVET. We are a newly formed COP, and we are trying to answer create a solution to the problems of unemployment, greening the infrastructure technologies by offering advanced building technologies. And the question that I have for IFC Botswana is, can we be able to approach you and discuss on our modalities in terms of how we are approaching the infrastructural development projects for Botswana? Take, for instance, the housing in terms of residential, hospitals, clinics, because we have a model that we call a work-based training model that we want to trial test and pilot through the government through a 5% quota. So we'll just want to have some discussions with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Ngodia will answer very briefly, and of course there will be a tea break just afterwards, and you're welcome to ask more questions to our colleagues. Thank you.
I think, so I mean, we do have, I think I'll direct this question to my colleague Esther on the advisory side, but we do have on the infrastructure side, like I mentioned earlier on, we had, when we invested in Bowen, the funding went into supporting EDGE-certified affordable housing units. So we've got a green certification called Excellence for Design and Efficiencies in it's a green certification. I've got the full name, but it's a green certification that was set up by IFC, which sometimes we complement our investments, the investments that we make with. Also, we've got a service called GRIP, whereby we support companies in their decarbonization strategies. So we help design, implement, and also fund the decarbonization strategies. So in summary, those are some of the tools that we use as IFC in supporting the transition.
Thank you very much. So I would, Pinky, maybe one last question, and then we can break for coffee. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm not supposed to stand, right? Good morning. My name is Pinky Tau. Mine goes more along how IFC can help Botswana and the private sector, particularly in the solar space. Solar has been positioned as a priority, but it is also one that can create employment as a commodity, not as a utility. However, the challenge is we're still perceiving solar energy as a utility and still buying a lot from our neighbors, whereas I know the government has been heavily engaged with our neighbors to export utilities, but even small initiatives such as your rooftop solar have been limited to 110% of what, based on what you utilize in the house, whereas that's an opportunity to trade, and how you can probably assist Botswana and the individuals, households, in terms of structuring and financing that space so that it is trade. We look at it as a commodity, not from green energy perspective, where it cuts a lot of people not to see it as a tradable exchange that can easily boost this economy. Thank you.
Heidi?
Okay, sorry. Yes, so what you've suggested is not is being used in other jurisdictions, right? The ability to be able to say, let's put rooftop solars on a residential, and it kind of also works well, like if you are during the day when people are out of work, they're generating these rooftops, residential rooftop generating power that they can sell back to the grid at a very cheap price as well. Sorry, it's a very cheap price as well to sell back to the grid. So we've seen those residential, and we've rooftop solar being deployed in other countries, but at the same time, there has to be the policy or regulatory or statutory framework that would allow for the growth of rooftop solar, the adoption. So in South Africa, there was a tax incentive to allow for people were able to get a tax rebate back. I'm not fully cognizant of the details that encourage the adoption of solar rooftop. So it's definitely a legitimate avenue to explore. And I think many people want to do that. And the beauty of it is that there are solutions. Some people can afford to install it themselves, but even if you cannot, for those that cannot afford the upfront capital, there is a growing group of companies that are looking to provide a lease model that you can pick 2 years, 5 years. You want to pay for your solar system over 2 or 5 years and then own it. So it is legitimate, but you need to have the proper regulatory framework or statutory framework in place to allow for that. So.
Thank you very much. I think it is time for us to break for tea and coffee. It is just after 11:20, so I suggest we reconvene here at 11:45. Thank you for your interest so far. Thank you, Mr. Vice President and Minister of Finance for staying and asking questions as well. And we look forward to having further presentations and discussions after the coffee and tea break. Thank you.
Labor rights must adapt to digital realities. Still, we still have a gap in this, and we're not talking, well, we are talking about it, but there's nothing being done about it. Inclusion. Now, I speak passionately about inclusion, not just because I'm a youth and a woman. I speak passionately about inclusion because when we talk about inclusion, I think the word inclusion has existed in our dictionaries in Botswana in platforms such as this way past 2015. But still, we have an inclusion gap. Inclusion, and I want to talk about real inclusion, is not just about ticking boxes and saying, okay, fine, today we have a youth in our panel, yes, we've included them, or we've gotten X amount or X number of youth in our companies, yes, we've included them, or X amount of women in our companies, or X amount of persons living with disabilities in our companies. Real inclusion is about intentionally creating environments where these groups and where these people can thrive. Can they hold leadership positions? Can they make decisions? If they cannot do those two things, then we haven't included them, right? Because there's no real influence that comes from inclusion if these people hold no or little power, right? It's about, and I put this intentionally to say, it's about allowing them to fail and fail forward. And when I say allowing them to fail and fail forward, I say this because when we put persons with disabilities or youth or women in certain positions that they have not occupied before, they will have some errors. But we must allow them and give them opportunity to fail and fail forward. We must capacitate them to be able to grow sustainably in whatever working environments that we are. So then again, when we talk about inclusion, it's not about to say there were X amount of youth in this room. It's to say, have we created environments that allow these youth that we have brought into this room, that allows us persons with the disabilities that we've brought into this room to actually create change? Because then that creates a ripple effect. Because in X amount of years, if we then do what we call real inclusion, we won't be talking about it as inclusion anymore because it'll be the norm, right? We would have created real value.
Bagaitsu, hurt people will hurt other people. So let's break the cycle of violence. Seek help, even if you were abused many years ago. Do not wait for a volcanic eruption of your emotions. Say no to gender-based violence. It starts with you.
How are you? Really, how are you? If this question irritates you, if it sparks a lump in your throat, please get help and talk about it and say no to any form of violence.
Nearly 1 in 4 females and 1 in 7 males aged 18 and 24 who have experienced childhood sexual violence have had their first incident happen at 13 or before 30. This could be your story. It could be your husband's story, your children's story, your mother's, even your father's. So open your eyes, open your ears, use your voice. Say no to gender-based violence. #no excuse.
Gender-based violence is an injustice that silences potential and destroys lives. It is not just a personal issue, it's a societal crisis. We must stand together and break the cycle, speak out, and support those who suffer. By raising our voices, we create a safer, more equal world for all. Change starts with each one of us. Let's stand together and stop the violence today. #Enough is enough.